Director for the Office for Veteran and Military Academic Engagement. We're really happy to have everybody here today. This is exciting for our office and for OLLI. This is called the OLLI and OVMAE Celebrating Veteran Stories. You'll see more about that later. But first, I'd just really like to introduce our host and our beloved poet, inaugural poet laureate of Phoenix, Rosemarie Dombrowski. She's a founding director of Revisionary Arts, a nonprofit that promotes self-care and healing through poetry. She's published 3 collections of poetry and is the recipient of an Arts Hero Award, a Great 48 Award, and the Arizona Humanities Outstanding Speaker Award. Woo-hoo! In April 2022, she gave a TED Talk entitled The Medicinal Power of Poetry. She's a teaching professor at ASU, like me. She's the founding editor of Rinky Dink Press and the faculty editor of Gray Matter, the medical poetry journal of the U of A College of Medicine, Phoenix. She's a daughter and half-sister of veterans of the United States Marine Corps and U.S. Air Force. Go Air Force. So Rosemarie, thank you so much for hosting this and coming up with the idea and everything. I think it's an awesome opportunity for some of us who are those sort of niche writers to just at least express ourselves this time as we get more courage, really, to do this kind of stuff. So thank you so much. The floor is yours.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for allowing me to curate and host these. I think this is our second Veterans Voices reading. We kicked this series off in November during Veterans Month. So we're hoping to have at least 2 a year every year. And we love doing them remotely because then we can have our friends from out of state, veterans in our wider network can come and participate and can come and listen. And in case everybody doesn't know this, April is National Poetry Month. So all the more reason to host events like this in April. They're going on all over the country, libraries, schools. So we want to be a part of that as well. Most importantly, I'm the founding editor of Issued Stories of Service, which is a journal for active duty veterans and family members based here at ASU and also supported by the Office of Veteran and Military Academic Engagement. And in case some of you are local and don't know this yet, we'll be launching our second issue on Wednesday, May 15th, 6 p.m. at Changing Hands Bookstore in Phoenix, and we would love to see you there. So Stacy will probably put that information in the chat room, please. And thank you. Someone put that information in the chat room. May 15th, it's a Wednesday, 6 p.m., Changing Hands Bookstore, free admission. We will be selling the journals this year. We've got a lot of great speakers and readers that evening, so hope that you'll join us for that. And as Wanda already stated, tonight's reading is hosted by OVMAE and the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute at ASU. I work for both. Both do a fantastic job of inspiring creativity and community in those that they serve. So we're grateful for this partnership. And we have 8 talented veteran writers here with us tonight, including Jack Blair, Beth Liechti Johnson, Christopher Elliot, Wanda herself, Wanda Wright, hopefully John Johnson, don't know if he's here yet or not, Jennie Blair, Jake Sleutel, and Amanda Tallman. So I'm going to get us started right now. We've got both poetry and prose tonight. And our first reader who's going to kick it off for us is reading prose, I'm pretty sure. His name is Jack Blair. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce him right now. Jack served in the U.S. Navy for 6 years on active duty and 6 years in the Army Reserves with deployments and activations throughout. He has deployed to Central America and Afghanistan and has volunteered with Team Rubicon in Ukraine. Jack has a passion for working in public service and technology. He founded the Overland Channel in 2021 to start a community around self-sustained vehicle travel. Podcasting led Jack to start the Veteran Stories podcast, which highlights veterans and their stories and identifies resources for them. I was lucky enough to be a guest on his podcast last year, and that is how we met. So without further ado, Jack Blair.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity. I'm not I wouldn't call myself a poet per se, but yes, so I'll definitely be reading some prose. This is a part of my story, and I am happy to share it with you. Here we go. It's called This Is Not a Draft. So I was 16 years old when 9/11 happened. My brother was in the Navy, stationed at Pearl Harbor, and it made me think, and I thought I'd join to be a traveling sailor. I wanted to explore the world, do something good, do whatever I could. The Navy was not quite what I thought it would be. Adventure seemed to be all around me, but deployments were hard to get. Finally, my turn for sea duty came, and I took my place midships, manning a 50 cal and a fire hose. I found fire flights aplenty. A month out to sea, I got the call. There's going to be a baby. The new world, the ocean I'd grown to love, would soon be traded for desert. After he was born, we tried for a month, but then it was clear things would not work. I moved out, I moved on, I became a devil, and I found my true love. We laughed, we danced, we read, we drank coffee, flirted, and fell in love. One spring day, we hiked the Flatiron, and I proposed my love to her. Would she be my always, my forever? Little did she know how heavy a load that could be. We celebrated our love. A month later, we married, a Braveheart wedding, hand-fasted in a forest with a priest. We laughed, we danced, we celebrated. Life was still a struggle for me. I had love, but my work needed purpose. The Army courted me, and so she supported me, signing back up for another go-round. I donned my uniform again, shaved my head and my beard, and excited I trained. Running, push-ups, rucking. It's all the same. I'm 26, but I get this. I've been through it before. 2 years in, when my turn comes, deployment is here, time to learn. All the new things you never knew before. So I go to Afghanistan, a new language, new teams, new schemes. I had a good deployment. Only a few bumps and bruises, a little bit of blood, but mostly a feeling of success. Then the call came to HQ. They lied. They don't know what to say. What do you say when you're giving life-changing news? They made shit up. So I came. I heard the news. My heart started breaking. I'm 9,000 miles away in a war zone, and he's the one who's hurt. I was worried about the Taliban, but I should have been thinking closer to home. It took me 2 days to get home. She waited by his side until I made it. They picked me up at the airport. I saw his half-shaved head, his swollen body, plumbed with hoses to keep things moving. His eyes were closed. He laughed no more. My little boy was gone. Our whole life was changed. Detectives, lawyers, outsiders. Our home was invaded. For the last 10 years, we've been invaded because we dared to live. Therapists told my wife we had a greater than 100% chance of divorce. Couples just don't survive this. TBIs, explosions, war, none of these things prepared me for the invasion that occurs when you lose someone. So publicly it happens. Your life is on trial for merely trying to have a family. Depression drowns you. Without her, you'd be dead. But the depression is a toxin that poisons you in your head. How do you go on when nothing makes sense? When all of life is a struggle? You hold on and are held on to. She pulled me up time and time again, loving me in ways no one else knew how. We are arrogant enough to believe that we deserve to be happy, alive, and in love. And so we go on each day greeting the sun and searching for the light, the joy that keeps us from falling into the night. Our hearts have hurt, but we hold on to each other through the dark, dark night. Thank you.
Jack, thank you so much for sharing that beautiful and painful love story. That's what I'd call it, a love story. Thank you so much. Really beautiful. Our next reader is Beth Liechti Johnson. She served in the U.S. Army from the Cold War through the global war on terror, including Operation Iraqi Freedom. She is the creator of Launch Your Light, Why Journal in the 21st Century, and an editor and writer for As You Were, the Military Review, Since You Asked, and Issued Stories of Service. She volunteers as a director with Veterans Heritage Project and as an ambassador representing Arizona for the Military Women's Memorial. Her stories and poems have been published in several anthologies and journals. Beth, welcome.
Oh, thanks, Rosemary. Appreciate it.
Of course.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. I really appreciate this opportunity, Wanda and Stacy. So I hope you'll put up with my poem. It's called Oh Man. Oh man, don't want to be a man when stepping out in my OD fatigues, but like to pound my chest, kick and stomp, stand in front, take charge, earn my keep, pay my dues, know the answer. Mother says ladies don't act like that. Don't want to be a man as whispers race behind my back, once or twice to my face. Not so, lassie, not so. But what do they know? Like to get dirty, roll around, shake it off. A hot bath on Tuesday and Saturday night suits me fine. Content in flannel, at peace with a knife. Don't want to be a man because I'm a woman. With easy curves, an ache for whiskers, craggy flesh, macho reticence. So busy not wanting to be a man, detour past babes never conceived, abandoned for independence. Don't want to be a man buried alone in the earth, drop to my knees before the rock of ages, who gives grace enough to walk beside my man, sates my dry wild with living water, with or without a man or a child, dirty or not.
What a powerful piece, Beth. I love the way you performed that. Thank you so much. Beth once told me the reason that she joined the Army was because she wanted to jump out of planes. So I felt that. You didn't put that in the poem, but I felt it while you were reading it. Thank you so much for that. Our next reader is Christopher Elliot. He was born in Minneapolis, Minnesota in 1946. He received a BS in biology at the University of Dubuque, Iowa in 1968. He was honorably discharged from the U.S. Army and is a veteran of the Vietnam War. Christopher was a career scientist and corporate training executive. He retired in Phoenix, Arizona after living in Indiana, Boston, and New York City. Today, he is a certified master gardener, diabetes education and kid camp founder, and participates in the Arizona Republic Storytellers Project. He enjoys cooking, photography, exploring Arizona, and reading. Christopher, thanks so much for joining us.
And I'm going
Your
to
volume.
start with my first.
Christopher, your volume's a little sketchy. It's really sketchy.
You know, because
Yeah, it's just
it's sketchy.
garbled and yeah.
A moment.
Oh yeah.
I'm
We
going to
won't
see
be
if
able.
I can improve this bandwidth. Hold on.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, as long as you keep your camera off, I think you'll be great. Let's give us a test. Testing.
Okay, that might help.
That's perfect. Wonderful. We
you
won't
still
get
hear
to see your handsome face while you read, but that's okay because we'll be able to hear you. So.
That's all right.
Uh-oh. Oh
That's
no.
a good thing. You know, back from the days of the first issue. Okay. You know, the days and the draft, you know, the Selective Service required 18-year-old men to register. That meant the draft. In my life from November 1964 to March 13th, 1969, 1,475 days. The U.S. Department of Defense needed conscripts for the war in Vietnam. Lots and lots of men, young men. My relationship elective service started at Waukegan, Illinois, November 30th, 1964, when I registered and received my draft card. It seemed the board received continuous mail from my household supporting deferments and pleading our case for time. The family had 3 draft age men and 2 vets. Dad seemed to know Dorothy at the draft board personally, the way he talked about it anyway. Freshman year at college began 78 days before I registered for the draft. Sophomore year began 271 days after draft registration day, and the draft was in full swing at 35,000 men per month through 1965. Crappy semesters here and there created academic probation, setting into motion letters of intent and academic promises to Dorothy at the board. Dad and Dr. Cadigan, an advisor, kept me deferred at 2S. I was nervous all the time. Senior year ended, the summer school to make up those crappy semesters. College ended 1,358 days after the draft registration. The base level of draft anxiety and fear ratcheted up as deferments expired. Eligible male, 22 years old, 1A. Just 210 days from a summer school to draft day. I'm one of a third of all Vietnam veterans who were draftees, mostly Army, versus enlistees who made up the majority. One brother was an enlistee, another was drafted way before me. My trip to induction at West Van Buren Street, Chicago, started from home in Evanston, Illinois, via 1968 Seafoam Green Mustang. Good luck, stay low, keep laughing on the inside. See ya, said with concerned eyes and pride. Day of reckoning, as they all say. Then the induction hand raised. I, Christopher Elliot, solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I bear truth, faith, and allegiance to the same, and that I will obey the orders of the President of the United States and the order of the officers appointed over me, according to the regulations and the Uniform Code of Military Justice. So help me God. Drafted, inducted, waiting, smoking with men and boys, folding of papers, orders to report to camp at Fort Polk, Louisiana. My 4 years, 3 months, and a couple of odd weeks of deferred draft status was over. I had been a student deferred, board reassigned, and a unique employment seeker. Training, then home, then deployed to Swan Lock, Vietnam for 396 days, then the world, and then home. And then I'd like to fast forward 19,836 days. Honor happened at ease. Honor explores integrity. Honor explains actions. Honor displays colors. The white stone is cool, worn to the west wind, still bright at this February sunset. Been called by an honorable soldier, growing, to explore, grieve, honor, question, together as brothers, still in awe, the Huachuca dead, commanders, privates, sergeants, widows, orphans, newborns, brothers. Stand straight, soldier. Honor the headstones. Honor the words, the symbols carved, his rank, his place, his legacy, his fight. Ashes too, vessels upright, petals sprinkled, vases stowed. Button up, soldier. Thanks, Artie.
Loved that ending, Christopher. Thank you so much. I know some of you were still saying the sound was a little iffy, but so much better with your camera off. It only cut out like, a little bit here and there. So thank you so much, Chris. What a great piece about your harrowing experience waiting for the Vietnam draft. Well, our next reader is the director of OVMAE, Wanda Wright. She is the third generation of her family to serve in the U.S. military. She is a United States Air Force Academy graduate and holds an MBA, an MPA, and an MA in educational leadership. After 21 years with the Arizona National Guard, she retired from military service in 2011 at the rank of colonel, and in 2015, she was selected by Governor Ducey to lead the Arizona Department of Veterans Services. In June 2023, she was selected as the director of the Office for Veteran and Military Academic Engagement at ASU. We're so lucky to have her, and she is sharing a poem with us tonight. Wanda.
Thanks, Rosemary. So this poem sort of came to me in the night. Sometimes you just wake up with things. And so I'd like to read it to you. It's called The African American Officer's Wife. She stops her car at the gate and waits. What she sees in his eyes is that familiar look of hate. The gate guards look at the sticker on the car of the African American officer's wife. She does not move. The guard should salute the car, but he hesitates and does not acknowledge the African American officer's wife. She thinks, I am an officer's wife. I have led this life of duty and service to my husband and my country. I deserve better than this. Who will make this right? Does she continue to wait, to make an issue and fight in front of all these people who are white? Does she wait or move on and explain to her husband, who serves this nation with honor, about this slight? She has seen history unfold through these segregated times. In the face of this adversity, she will still wear her smile. As she decides to continue on her way, she tells herself it is fine. She will remain an African American officer's wife with strength and grace. She knows deeply this is about race. But who will make it right? Who will make it right for the African American officer's wife? Thanks.
That's a powerful piece, Wanda. Thank you so much for sharing that. It looks like our next reader is going to be Jennie Blair. In the past 26 years, Jennie Blair has evolved from a student worker at ASU to the Associate Director of Enrollment Services for the downtown Phoenix campus. Her academic journey in English literature and higher education fuels her passion for lifelong learning. Additionally, her role as a military spouse has deepened her perspectives, supporting her husband, Jack, through his Navy service, his work at the Pat Tallman Veterans Center, and his time with the Army Reserves, including a deployment to Afghanistan. Jennie, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. I appreciate holding space in this community. I identify as a military spouse, and I recognize the privilege and honor in being in this world. So thank you all for thinking to include me. So I've titled this piece, The Work of Tortoises. Today, we moved our son's tortoise outside from a small glass enclosure that we had been keeping in his room. I hadn't really realized how knotted Leo the tortoise's shell had become. I guess he had grown without me not noticing because he was just hiding away in shadows in little tortoise cubbies that you buy at PetSmart. My only glance as I tossed collard greens inside his habitat was to ensure he was still alive. At first, when we took him out of his enclosure for this relocation plan, he looked distorted to me, and I felt badly for him, my stomach nodding a bit. Well, then I realized he was just growing. He was doing what he was supposed to do, and he hadn't need me to be watchful over him. He went from a super small enclosure to a giant garden bed in our backyard, full of lush plants and extra dirt for burrowing and traversing. We had a camera on him to track his movements because he was my little guy, and this was his first night out of the house. Silly, I know. When I checked him in the middle of the night, he had scooted over to the far side of the corner, even though there was so much space for him to walk around. I guess sometimes when you grow, you're not sure what to do with that new space. And in a lot of ways, that reminds me of how my husband came home from war. His shell was harder, and I felt sorry for him because he looked distorted and he had grown, but wasn't used to all this new space. He stayed in his corner for a long time, and I finally learned not to keep checking in on him, just like I was still checking on Leo the tortoise. I guess you just have to let people and tortoises stay in their corner as long as they need to, and just remind them that you'll be there when they start to venture out again. I guess growth happens without my vigilant attention. Here's what I'll say about tortoises. The work of tortoises is never done. They carry the weight of existence, each step a testament to resilience. Tortoises can't leave their shells, and we can't leave our stories. Our stories are both our identity and our armor. The work of tortoises, much like our own, unfolds in the quiet persistence of time, and it's really never done. It unfolds slowly, and it's okay to be slow.
I loved that metaphor so much. What a great piece. Jack, I hope you were okay with that. It was beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
It was so beautiful. What a wonderful tribute to you, and what a great analogy.
Jack the
Thank
tortoise.
you. I know he's the tortoise. What a great piece. Thank you so much. And we're happy that we could hold space for you as well. So nice to meet you tonight. Our next reader was published in the first issue of Issued, along with Christopher Elliot. And because he currently lives on Beaver Island in Lake Michigan, we knew that this was the only way we were going to be able to get him to read his poem for us. Again, this is Jake Sleutel. He lives on Beaver Island, and he works as an artist and electrician and spends his time playing guitar, knitting sweaters, searching for sculptural sticks, and contemplating a kinder world. The time he spent in the Arctic while serving in the Coast Guard was formative. He tries to encourage others by watering good seeds. Love your bio, Jake.
Thank you. I don't have much of an introduction for this. I know I wrote most of it in the engine room of a boat. When I moved to the island, I worked on the ferry boat that runs people back and forth. It's a 32-mile ferry ride. So while sitting in the engine room, I just had some deeper thoughts on war and how we are as humans. So that's kind of the background of this. And it's called We Fight. Leaders perch at lavish tables, giving lip service to peace, but inaction murders us, and still we fight. Skin purples from pressure. As our as our human family splits over land or riches, and still we fight. The ground explodes as we play. Where 60 years ago, they planted mines instead of rice, and still we fight. All hearts need to belong, to be included, and our soft bones know that othering is just mothering, fallen short, yet still we fight. That's it.
That is filled with beautiful, beautiful, and really powerful imagery, Jake. Thank you so
Sorry about
much.
losing it a little bit there.
No need to apologize. That just made us feel it all the more. Thank you. What a beautiful piece. I like it more now than I did before after hearing you read it. So you did it justice. It's better
Thanks for
coming
putting
from
this
you
together.
even than it is on the page. So thank you. Really an honor to have you join us here. Most of us are in Arizona. I saw Seal join us though too, and I know she's not in Arizona. So what a thrill to have her. Her piece is going to be, a couple of her pieces are going to be featured in the upcoming issue of Issued. So hopefully she will join us in August for the virtual launch of Issued, even though she can't be in Phoenix in a few weeks for that. And Jake, we'll be sure to invite you to anything we do virtually.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. And our final reader, I saw her just turn her camera on. So good to see you again, Amanda, is Amanda Tallman. Amanda is an Army veteran, and she graduated with a master's in social work from Arizona State University. She's passionate about supporting individuals with chronic illness and physical disabilities and has experience using a range of therapeutic modalities. She has facilitated groups and spoken publicly about mental health challenges, specifically with people connected to veterans, foster and adoptive parents, and chronic illnesses. She also runs a nonprofit called First Page, which brings horses and kids and veterans together to create resiliency. Amanda, so great to have you back.
Thank you. So the piece that I'm sharing today is called 2 Minutes in the Bathroom. And it's just a piece that I wrote about 6 months ago when I was struggling. So I retreat to the bathroom to hide for a moment yet again. Fully clothed, I lay down and close my eyes. I pull my shirt up so that my back can feel the cold of the bathtub, and then I begin to pray. Then my mind starts to wander. Just notice, I tell myself, like I would a therapy client, without judgment, I remind myself. Have compassion for yourself, Amanda. Then the heaviness of the duality of my feelings sets in. On one hand, I feel angry, disappointed, embarrassed for even joining the Army. On the other hand, I feel proud, excitement, and even joy. I argue with myself in my head while trying to show compassion. Mom, a little voice says while she knocks on the door. I begin to cry. I swallow and clear my voice. I'll be right out. I try to sound cheerful. Mom, are you okay? I sink a little deeper in the tub. My 9-year-old son has figured out something is wrong. Then the grief hits me, and I begin to sob. In the split second, a battle in my mind begins. Do I respond or do I cry? Do I respond or do I cry? Over and over again, I question myself. I can't do both at this moment. I try to sob silently, holding in the tears, but tears pour down faster and faster. Then it hits me. He's so worried. I begin to follow the lines in the room to get me thinking in my prefrontal cortex or thinking brain. I'm okay, Caleb. I'll be out in a minute. I'm just feeling sad. I know either my husband or my 14-year-old will be next. You can do this, Amanda. I pep myself up in my head, and then I go back to praying. God, I'm so, so sad. I feel so, so alone. People have expectations of me I can't fulfill, not just my family, but friends, people I meet, people I used to know, people I will know. I'm only one person. I can't do this without you. Silence fills my head, and then I feel a rush over my body. And then I feel love. I feel utterly and authentically loved. I feel safe and secure and lavished in love. Love and grace and gratitude begins to fill my heart. God, you're here. I'm not alone. I try to pull myself out of the tub with the handle next to me, but I can't get out. I yell for my husband, Philip. Now I'm crying happy tears, grateful for him and all the amazing people in my life. How do I live loved? I ask myself, still trying to figure out a way to maneuver out of the tub. I'm finally upright and tears begin to fill my eyes. I pause as I hear the little pitter-patter of feet by the bathroom door. I can take a minute for myself. The problem is the moments add up, and all of a sudden my kids are 4, 9, and 14. I thank God for the people I love and the people who are no longer with us, the ones we lost to suicide, the ones we lost to war, the ones we lost to illness and disease from the war. A tear rolls down my face, and I hear my daughter playing with dolls. I debate whether I can set aside my grief to play with her. I start to daydream about the mom I wish I was, the fun, fit woman I was before my cancer and illness. I stop myself and realize I'm still alive. I don't know how to sit with my own thoughts. When I do, it doesn't feel very safe. Mom, I have to use the bathroom. There she is, the 14-year-old. I'm coming out. I flushed the toilet to pretend like I was using it. Then I wash my hands. My husband walks in. He starts to wrap his arms around me, but I'm so activated in the moment that my senses tell me it's not safe. And now I begin to cry again. He instantly realizes what's happening and apologizes. Do you need a minute? I take a deep breath and I know it's time to move on for the day, but I promise myself to come back to those feelings when there is time. And then I close the door.
Thank you, Amanda. Always such heartfelt and real pieces, and I love them. Fantastic. Since we have a little bit of time left, if anybody in the audience has a question for any of the writers, they are open and potentially willing to answer. So I'd love to open it up to the floor. You can ask a question and just see who answers, or you can pose it to a specific reader. You could put it in the chat room and I'll read it for you. It'd be about writing, could be about service, could be about the piece they read tonight. I don't really have a question for Jake, but while other people are thinking, I'll just say that when you mentioned where you wrote the piece, it kind of reminded me of like the old 19th century cats, like Hawthorne and Melville, who were always like either like writing at a shipping yard or like writing at a dock or something, always writing while they were doing that kind of work. Maybe things just come to you because you have to pass the time. Is that a good
Yeah.
space to write? Is that a creative space for you because of that?
Well, typically engine rooms on ships are very loud. So you're down there with hearing protection on if you're smart. And you're kind of, monitoring gauges and stuff like that. But then there's a lot of waiting to make the next round on the ship or whatever. So there is a lot of time sitting there with, a lot of noise, and it's kind of a zen time too. There's a lot of vibration, and either you choose to enjoy it or it kind of drives you crazy.
I can only imagine. Thanks for sharing that. Looks like there's a couple things popping up in the chat room. We have a question from Nate. When writing, how do you know when it's completed? My thoughts keep going, and I often ponder this question. Anybody want to tackle that? How do you know it's completed when you're writing?
I don't feel like things are ever completed. They're just due.
Hmm,
You just got
I
to
like
turn them
that.
in.
That's a student perspective for sure, right?
The story continues,
TikTok.
right? It continues, but we've got to turn it in.
TikTok, exactly. I like that. Anybody else want to tackle that one? When you're writing, when is it complete?
Hmm.
Hmm.
Well, I think it's
Oh, Chris, you got to turn your camera off.
since I'm writing about the days, since
should be a
I'm
little bit.
writing about the days of Laureate, I keep writing the story. And I say, 19,836 days, so that's 20 years between the time that I ended my first, ended Vietnam, and now I have a nephew that's completing his training at down at the poem was about. So I'm continuing the count.
I like that. Yeah, I'm not sure stories are ever completed. I mean, as long as we're alive, right? I mean, if we're telling our
Yeah.
own stories, those stories continue to evolve. They obviously grow to include the next generation and the next generation. I think it's a little different for poets because you can't encapsulate a life story within a poem. Oftentimes we try to do that, I think, in prose, in memoir, in autobiography, in reportage, but we can't do that in poetry. Uh, I'm not sure how do I know when the poem is done? Um, I maybe Jake, can you take this? How do you know when the poem is done? Because
Um,
your poem was so short but so powerful. So
yeah, I guess I tried to imagine, um, you know, um, how the reader is digesting it and like what they will take away from it. And it's kind of like passing a baton. At the end of it, you hope that they will think about things and maybe interpret it differently than you wrote it even. Um, I read a very good poet book written by Ted Kooser, who was a poet
mm,
laureate, and
yeah,
called the Poetry Home Repair Manual or something to that
yes,
effect. It's got a
yes.
picture of a toolbox on it, and it was the most helpful book. I've just read it over and over the last probably 20 years, and it's just a very good toolbox. And it's he kind of likens that to giving it over to the reader. You always have the reader in mind, and instead of my own drivel in my head.
I love that. Yeah, and I love the metaphor, the analogy of passing the baton. I used to always tell my students, don't try to tie your poems up in a bow. Don't think that you need to complete it in this very like knotted way for us, because then there's nowhere for us to get in and kind of take over. So I love that passing the baton. That's fantastic. All right, I'll stop talking because Daniela has a question. Oh, Nate said, I and mine when I discover my breath has been taken away. Maybe I'm not alone. No, I think you're right. I think sometimes that's it. When the poem overcomes us, when the energy of it, when the emotion of it overcomes us, sometimes that is when we stop. It's a great one too. Um, Daniela has a question as well. You all talked about some of the struggles you've experienced and overcome. These are questions for everyone. Were there moments when you wanted to just give up and walk away from it all? What kept you going, serving, and fighting? Anybody who served want to tackle that one? Hmm.
I mean, I'll just say that, you know, my my trauma wasn't as much related to my service as just really what was happening at the same time. And so part of my trauma was losing my service because I was so passionate about it. And that was really rough. But, you know, a good support group, right? A good support spouse or a circle or group of friends is the only thing that I mean, my wife kept me going. I'll just plain and simple, right? So it's pretty straightforward and easy there. If you've got someone who gives you, you know, Sean Banzoff talks about the 5 L's, right? But really it's just love in my mind, right? Someone who gives you the love that you need and the space that you need. So
That's great. That's beautiful.
Yesterday, somebody brought up Mr. Rogers, and I thought it was kind of funny because they brought it up to a really young group, and they all kind of looked blankly at everyone else, and they were like, "Mr. Rogers," but you know how he always said to find the helpers in the room, and I think that there's so many helpers out in the world that will help people get through whatever they need, and so you just have to find that one helper.
That's great. Thank you, both of you. Love, community. Wanda, did you want to tackle that question too?
I guess, you know, when I wrote my poem, I wrote it about my parents. Because I haven't actually had many struggles in the military. I wasn't deployed. I loved my life in the military. And so, you know, I know there's a lot of people out there who had a lot of struggles being in the military, like daily, on the daily. But I didn't really have that. So it's hard for me to sort of pull something out that so I hearkened back. I did a videotape of my father. It was like 3 hours worth of videotape to ask him about his life, right? And that was one of the stories in the videotape. And for some reason, just like I said, I woke up in the middle of the night thinking about this event and like almost videotaping it through my mind, what my mom was going through when she sat at that gate, wondering what the hell was happening, right? And why isn't this dude doing what he's supposed to do? So and I honestly think if I write ever again, it's probably again going to be about my parents because the struggles that they had at that time were quite significant, and it should be honored, I guess is what I'd like to say. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that, Wanda. And thanks, Daniela, for that great string of questions. Nate, for your questions. Janet, for your participation. That sensation of your breath being taken away is what hits you at the end of a moving poem. And not so much resolution. I guess I've never believed that, you know, any story, any poem, any piece of prose is about resolution. It's about the journey. That's what we all relate to as humans. I don't like happy endings, frankly. I don't think they're very realistic. So I prefer to just be gutted or have my breath taken away. So that's, and I'm a medical poet and a disability writer as well. So I kind of live in that space of, you know, sort of perpetual struggle. That's the human experience, though.
I guess I'd like to ask, what made people start to write? Right? It's not necessarily an easy thing to do. Sometimes I guess you just got to get it out of your head. But what made you sort of take the pen in hand and start to write out your feelings versus singing or something else, right?
I see you laughing, Seal. You know, you can answer this question. We all know you're a writer. I called you out already.
I was thinking there's so many stories in the military and in my case in life as well that often make people uncomfortable. They want to look away because they're difficult, or they involve disability, or they involve assault, or they involve death, or some of the things we've seen. And so writing is a way to expel that without making anyone uncomfortable. They get to read it in private. It's there, it's on a page, it's not threatening.
And when they see me or they see a disability, it's like they want to know what the right response is, and that makes them uncomfortable. And I don't think there is a right response. And they don't have to feel uncomfortable, but you can say that to people all you wish. Military experiences tend to be very unique. And I think it's being able to share them on paper really opens up a much wider audience that I love seeing hear it. Thanks.
I love that. Jack, I know that you don't maybe do as much writing as Seal, but you're a podcaster, so you're always telling stories. You're always sharing stories. Is there a reason why you choose to share stories as opposed to getting it out through music or some other kind of art form?
Well, when it comes to sharing stories like the one I shared tonight, I have to write them. I have to write them because I can't talk about it in any other way. You know, with my trauma, I have a door inside of the house that's in my brain, and things go behind that door. And when I'm in a safe space, I can open that door and I can access that space. And otherwise, I can't. So talking offhand about something like tonight's story is something that I have to write down, because otherwise I won't make it through the moment, right? And you know, podcasting, I love just talking, right? Like I love getting on. It's the whole hear your own voice thing. But there are stories that I think are so important to share with people. Because I'm gonna go against JRD. I believe in positivity. Like I'm all about it. I think there's so many veterans out there who are hardcore and successful, and like we overcome trauma and we experience trauma, right? I think in a great way that not a lot of other people get to experience, just because we're put into harm's way intentionally. But you know, I think that we have this strength to us, and I want people to remember that, right? Like I want other veterans to know, like, you have strength inside of you. You've done hard things and you know how to do hard things. And so like when I started doing my podcast, and I do the Veteran Story podcast, and we try to highlight veterans and get their stories out for everybody to hear, but I do it because I started hearing really sad stories around veterans, and it's important to share all of the stories, right? But I want people to remember that veterans are not just one category. We aren't two categories, right? Sometimes you'll hear like the superhero category, and then you'll hear like the PTSD broken down veteran. And we are such a broad spectrum of experiences and people. And I really want to highlight that. So that's what motivates me to be in this space, is I really want to share those stories. And, you know, there's all different kinds of experiences, and I think that they're all important.
No, that was a great response. And, you know, thanks for calling me out. I appreciate that. I'm a big resiliency person. And that's really why I love Issued Stories of Service as well, because I think, you know, especially the issue that's about to come out this year, it runs the gamut. It runs the gamut of human experience and identity and trauma and loss and recovery and joy. And I think that's the real story. The anthology is the real story, not just one piece of the anthology. And all of it tells the human story. Yeah, Chris, I just saw you kind of light up.
You know, I was what really started me along writing, besides Emily, is the notion of the pen in hand and a quality piece of paper. I've always been a pen collector, but it was something to look at. And when I started touching the resin and touching the wood and touching the ceramic from the color and the texture and the feel, and then it and the veteran piece of it became just a natural component of who I am. And so my advice is to just pick up your favorite pen or find one you love and make sure you have backup in inkwell.
Great. That's great. I love that. Pick up your favorite pen, the one that feels good. I love it. I used to always write in pink and purple for that reason. I used to have those colored pens that just made me happy. And that was what I probably wrote my first poems in. That's great. Well, it is about that time. And again, I just want to thank all of the veterans and family members and guests who joined us tonight, but especially those of you who shared your stories. I know that Wanda and Stacy and I love these events, and we're definitely going to keep them going. So you'll all be on our list. You'll be invited back. And again, happy National Poetry Month. We're so grateful that you were able to join us for tonight's event. Thank you, especially to the writers who shared their work tonight. Thanks for your vulnerability and your resiliency.
Thanks, Rosemary. We love having you.
Thank you.
Please look forward to other flyers
Bye,
as we
Artie.
sign up for this. And it's something that we think is very powerful for the veteran community, and we're going to keep doing it. So thanks everybody for attending.
Wait a minute. I think John Johnson just got in here. Do we have 3? We have 3 minutes.
He
Do we have
did.
time?
Should we let him close it
Sure.
out tonight?
Please,
Yes.
please,
You can
yes.
All
close us out.
right. John, unmute thyself. Are you ready? I'll do a super quick introduction of you, and I'm so glad that we still have an audience for you. John Johnson, who I didn't think what
You ended on such an upbeat tone that I'm reluctant to do anything.
Oh, that's okay. That's all right. We were worried that you didn't have the link and weren't going to show up tonight. And then I thought, well, that's all right. He'll join us in person in a couple weeks at the launch of Issued. But let me introduce you really quickly. John Johnson was born in Indiana. He served in the U.S. Navy aboard the USS Taussig as a gunnery officer and ASW officer during 2 tours of duty to Vietnam. His American ancestors were pacifist Quakers for 12 generations. I love that juxtaposition. And he was the first member of his family to serve in the military. He taught for 40 years at Arizona State University as a professor of justice studies. And in recent years, he has been an active member of the organization Veterans for Peace. John, we're so thrilled that you could make it in just under the wire. So share whatever you feel comfortable with. No pressure, even though Stacy did put a lot of pressure.
Sorry.
Okay, I'll briefly read my poem here. The title of it is The Ghost of David Darling. I was the officer in charge of USS Taussig, DD 746, on July 16th, 1967, as we prepared for shore bombardment up north near Haiphong. Emergency sirens called me to the 5-inch 38 gun mount on the second deck, where Seaman apprentice David Darling had been decapitated. Amidst the chaos, I retrieved his head from the gunwale and tried to reattach it to his body. In vain. He was a good kid from West Virginia. He loved the Navy because it was his first time he'd ever slept on sheets and had 3 square meals a day. In his mind, this justified why he lied about his age to enlist in the service. The mission went on. Life went on. Until it all came crashing down 3 decades later in a counseling session during a midlife crisis. David Darling then became an occasional visitor for 4 more decades as I struggled with my duplicity in America's war culture.
John, I really do think that was the perfect ending, given everything we were talking about before you read. It was the perfect juxtaposition of trauma and resiliency. So thank you so much for joining us and for closing us out with that poem. Perfect
I'm very
timing.
sorry that I'm sorry that I missed everybody's comments.
John, that's quite all right. We will see you again in about a month at the launch of Issued. And before everybody leaves, if you scroll up to the top of the chat room, you'll see that flyer that Stacy put in there. It's a PDF and it's not viral, I promise. Go ahead and click on that. It'll open in another window, and then you will know where to go to get your hard copy of the new anthology of Issued on May 15th. Again, thank you all so much for sharing your stories and for ending on a note of resiliency, John. And thank you for being an advocate for peace as well. We
As
like
long as
that.
everyone's okay with it, I'll post this recording on YouTube on our OVMAE YouTube channel, and you can access it, John, at a later time if you wanted to hear the other stories, or if anybody wants to be able to hear the other poems and readings. That should go up
Sounds
probably
great.
hopefully this weekend.
Sounds great. Thank you, Stacy. Thanks again, everybody. Thank you, veterans, for sharing your stories. Can't wait till next time. Thanks for joining us, Jake, Seal. Thanks for coming from out of town.
You're putting it together.
Absolutely. Love doing it. Thank you.
Thank you to the readers.
Thank you, Seal. Can't
And
wait to
organized.
introduce your work to everyone here.